The 2026 WNBA draft has come and gone. Raven Johnson goes number 10 for Indiana. They also select Justine Passat. Flau'jae Johnson gets selected to Golden State, then gets traded. And as expected, Flau'jae Johnson, she was just so pumped to be drafted by the Golden State Valkyries. Didn't have to change her colors. Her eyeshadow matched. It was purple. And in the middle of the draft, the Seattle Storm traded the Golden State Valkyries for Flau'jae Johnson, and the Golden State Valkyries got Marta Suarez and a 2028 pick. I can only imagine that Flau'jae was crushed.
Flau'jae Johnson had barely put on the hat before everything changed. One of the biggest names in the entire draft had just heard her name called at number 8. Golden State took her. The moment looked massive. New franchise, big personality, big fan reaction. It felt like the kind of pairing the league could market instantly.
On draft night, what a journey, right? So you're picked by Golden State, and then you're headed to Seattle. I mean, what was the series of emotions that you were experiencing?
Man, it was like, wow, like I just got drafted. Like my name just got called. They played my song when I walked across the stage. I had the interview with Holly, and then as I'm walking back, my agent is like, they traded you to Seattle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to Seattle. That's where Sue Bird played at, and it was so cool. So it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't anything like I was like, oh my gosh, like no, it was just like I get an opportunity to play in the WNBA. This has been my dream to get my name called at the draft. I was looking good, so it was like
And then, almost as fast as the celebration started, the whole thing flipped. Flau'jae Johnson was traded. That is what made this one of the most shocking moments of the entire WNBA draft. Not just because a top pick got moved, but because of how fast it happened, how unexpected it felt, and how little sense it made to fans in the moment. Golden State selected Flau'jae at number 8, then sent her rights to the Seattle Storm in exchange for the rights to Marta Suarez and a 2028 second-round pick. That is the actual deal, and it immediately became one of the biggest talking points of the night.
I was one with the crowd. I was shocked. Okay, like you literally, when Kathy Engelbert said, hold on guys, we have a trade announcement. And everybody was like, huh? And it was like Flau'jae Johnson is being traded away from the Valkyries, the Golden State Valkyries, to the Seattle Storm. The whole crowd was like murmuring and like oohing and ahhing. It was gas and everybody was clutching their pearls. Like, what? How can that be? I never seen that before. I would watch NBA drafts, NFL drafts, the WNBA drafts. I never can recall a time where there was a trade agreement spoken and broken right then and there. I was like, is this normal? Is this good? Is this bad? What could this mean?
And here is why people reacted so strongly. Flau'jae Johnson was not some fringe first-rounder. She was one of the most visible players in the class. She came into the draft with star power, championship credibility from LSU, a built-in audience, and the kind of presence that can help a franchise on and off the court. WNBA.com called her one of the best guards available in the first round, and Seattle clearly valued her enough to move for her once Golden State made the pick. So when Golden State took her and then moved her almost immediately, fans did what fans always do. They started asking what the Valkyries saw that everyone else did not. Because on the surface, this looked backwards. If you liked Flau'jae enough to take her at 8, why move her? And if you were always planning to move her, why make that selection in the first place? That confusion only grew when details came out showing the trade had reportedly been agreed to before the selection was even made. ESPN reported Valkyries GM Ohima Nianan said the deal with Seattle was in place before Golden State turned in the pick. That changes the story.
The opportunity to add Flau'jae was really exciting and incredible for us. Didn't think that she would be available at that point. We had been in conversations, and so as we got closer to that pick, once it became a reality, just really excited. I think Flau'jae is a really dynamic, talented young player who's going to just impact on both ends of the court. She can score in multiple ways. She's a great defender, gets deflections, steals, going to be out in transition with our group. So we're really excited how she aligns and, helps us this year, but also is going to be a really important piece for us as we're building for the future.
Because this was not Golden State drafting Flau'jae, changing its mind, and panicking. This appears to have been a planned move. And that matters because it means the Valkyries likely viewed Flau'jae less as a player they wanted to build around and more as the asset Seattle most wanted. In other words, Golden State may have been using the board strategically. They saw value in what Seattle was willing to give them, and they decided they preferred that package over keeping Johnson themselves. Still, that explanation did not calm people down, because the return is what made the trade feel so dramatic. Golden State got Marta Suarez, who went 16th overall, plus a 2028 second-round pick. Suarez is not a throw-in. She is a real player. A 6'3" forward from TCU with size, scoring ability, rebounding, and shooting touch. She averaged 17.1 points and 7.4 rebounds in her final season and shot around 37% from three. That is a real profile. Golden State and outside coverage both pointed to her fit, size, and competitiveness as reasons the Valkyries liked her. But fans do not usually react to a trade by saying, that is a sensible long-term value play. They react to names. And Flau'jae Johnson is a name. That is why this trade felt bigger than the paper value of the deal. You are talking about a player with national recognition, a huge college platform, crossover appeal, and the kind of energy expansion teams usually love. So when Golden State moved her for a later first-turn player rights swap and a future second, the reaction was immediate. Why pass on the bigger spotlight? Why pass on the bigger ceiling? Why pass on a player that many viewers assumed was a perfect face of the franchise type fit? And then there is the Seattle side of this. Because if Golden State's move felt confusing, Seattle's move felt aggressive. The Storm saw Flau'jae sitting there, found an opening, and went up to get her. ESPN reported Seattle had been looking for a chance to move up, and the team clearly believed Johnson was worth it. That tells you a lot. It tells you Seattle did not see this as just a nice surprise. They saw her as an opportunity, a piece worth striking quickly for. That is why this trade creates two very different narratives at once. For Seattle, it looks like confidence. For Golden State, it looks like a gamble. Now, to be fair to the Valkyries, there is logic here. Expansion teams do not just need star names. They need roster balance, size, flexibility, and players who fit the system they want to build. If Golden State rated Marta Suarez highly, and if they believed the extra future pick mattered, then this may have been less about rejecting Flau'jae and more about building a broader foundation. Reporting around the move suggested salary structure and contract value may also have been part of the wider conversation, even if Golden State did not fully spell that out on the night. But here is the problem with that. When you make a move this surprising, you invite a much higher standard of proof. You have got to be right, because if Flau'jae becomes a star in Seattle, this trade is going to follow Golden State for years. Every big scoring night, every breakout stretch, every viral moment, every time Seattle fans fall in love with her game, people will go right back to draft night and ask why the Valkyries let her go so fast. That is the risk of moving a player this visible, this talented, and this early. And there is another layer here too. The emotional side. Draft night is supposed to be the moment, the celebration, the cap, the photos, the feeling that your next chapter has a clear beginning. For Flau'jae, that beginning moved underneath her almost instantly. People magazine even covered the family reaction and the fast-moving moment around her selection and trade. That is part of why the story hit so hard. It was not just strategic, it was personal. It felt abrupt. So what does this all mean now? For Seattle, it means they got one of the most talked about players in the class and a guard they clearly believe can be part of their future. For Golden State, it means the pressure is now on Marta Suarez and on the front office's evaluation process. They do not just need Suarez to be solid, they need this whole logic chain to hold up over time. Because this was not a quiet trade. This was not a move buried in the second round. This was one of the loudest moments of the night, and that is why people are still talking about it now. Golden State made one of the boldest decisions in the draft. Seattle made one of the sharpest. Flau'jae Johnson walked in as a Valkyrie and walked out headed to the Storm. That is not just a transaction. That is a draft night earthquake.
The Indiana Fever select Raven Johnson.
What's up, Indiana fans? It's Raven. I'm excited that you guys drafted me. I'm excited to get to work. Let's do it, Indiana fans.
Clark, a deep three.
Indiana Fever fans thought this draft was supposed to be simple. They thought Indiana had one obvious job: add size, add rim protection, add help in the paint. Because if you watched this team last season, you already know the problem. When the Fever ran into bigger teams, especially the elite ones, the physical gap showed up fast. And with the 10th pick in the draft, this felt like the perfect chance to fix it. But instead, the Fever made a move so shocking it made people literally yelp watching at home.
After last night's WNBA draft, it does seem that Raven Johnson is the talk of the town after the Indiana Fever drafted her number 10. My immediate reaction was that this was not the best fit for the Indiana Fever, but today I am turning the page, I am diving in, and I want to analyze Raven Johnson a little bit more for the Indiana Fever.
Indiana drafted Raven Johnson, and the reaction was immediate. Not because Raven Johnson is a bad player, not because she has no talent, but because for a team with Caitlin Clark already running the show and clear front court needs staring them in the face, this felt like the one move nobody expected.
And you have to remember, the Indiana Fever had the number 10 pick in the draft, and the number 10 picks in the draft don't usually make huge impressions on teams. And Raven Johnson does have championship pedigree. She did play an integral part to South Carolina this season. And yes, she kind of like ished the bed in the last 2 games for South Carolina, but in the Final Four, she did absolutely lock down Sarah Strong. So when you just think about Raven Johnson as an elite defender, there is promise there for sure.
That is what made this draft night moment so jarring, because Raven Johnson is listed at 5'9". She is a point guard, and on paper, that makes her the 3rd point guard on a Fever roster that already had much bigger issues to solve. The Fever needed length, they needed rebounding, they needed a player who could help Aaliyah Boston deal with the size and physicality of the top teams in the league. Instead, they added another ball handler.
Last season, I don't know how they did it, but they made the small ball thing work. And if Raven Johnson's game does translate from college to the pros, which is a big if because there's a big leap and a big level up there, I can see Raven Johnson being definitely an asset a few minutes off the bench and definitely somebody to develop as a backup point guard for Caitlin, a solid backup point guard for Caitlin. What definitely confused me about this is that they did just sign a solid backup in Ty Harris. I think that's what confused a lot of people, which is why hearing her name at number 10 kind of made everybody like gasp.
And that is where the frustration started. Now, to be fair, Raven Johnson is not some random reach with no resume. She is a winner. She has championship pedigree. She is tough, competitive, and by all accounts, improved her game over time. Even the criticism in the source material makes it clear this is not really about attacking Raven as a player. It is about whether she makes sense for Indiana right now, with this roster, in this moment. And once you ask that question, the Fever's decision gets harder to defend. Of course, there is also the Caitlin Clark angle, because a lot of fans instantly remembered that viral college moment. Iowa versus South Carolina. Caitlin Clark standing way off Raven Johnson, practically daring her to shoot, waving her off. That clip exploded online and became one of the defining images of that rivalry.
Watch Caitlin Clark, left side. She doesn't even look at her, waves her hand as if to say, I don't care about you, I'm not defending you.
Raven later talked about how badly that moment affected her, how the online backlash hit her, and how it became part of her motivation.
And then another adversity would probably be Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark, left side. She doesn't even look at her, waves her hand as if to say, I don't care about you, I'm not defending you.
That's one reason I hate the internet now. Because of that situation, like I got bashed, I got bullied, I got called all these things that I wasn't, aka like a monkey or this, I don't know, like it was just things like that. And I just think I wanted to quit basketball at that time.
So yes, from a content perspective, it is obvious why people latched onto that part of the story. Caitlin Clark and Raven Johnson now on the same team, that is instantly interesting. But here is the truth. That is not the real issue. This is professional basketball. Former rivals become teammates all the time. Players get over college history fast when they are chasing wins. So while that old Clark versus Raven clip gives the story juice, the real question is much simpler. Did Indiana make itself better with this pick? And based on the argument in the transcript, the answer looks like no. Because look around the WNBA. The league is getting bigger. Teams are valuing length, versatility, and players who can switch, rebound, and protect the rim. The New York Liberty are massive. The Atlanta Dream are getting bigger. The Mystics used their draft capital to add size. The strongest teams are not just talented, they are physically hard to deal with. And that is exactly where Indiana still looks vulnerable. Caitlin Clark gives you shot creation. Kelsey Mitchell gives you scoring. Aaliyah Boston gives you a paint anchor. Lexi Hull gives you perimeter value. The Fever also added toughness in free agency. But even with that, the source material keeps returning to the same point. Indiana still needed a true answer against elite front courts. They still needed more length and interior presence. And that is why this pick felt like such a miss, because bigger options were right there. The transcript points to players like Medina Okot and Cody McMahon as examples of more logical fits, not because they were guaranteed stars, but because they addressed the Fever's actual weakness. If your biggest problem is getting outsized and beaten up inside, then using a lottery-level pick on another smaller guard feels like ignoring the test question and writing your answer on a different page. That is what makes this so frustrating. It is not that Indiana had no choices, it is that they had choices and still went the other way. And what makes it even stranger is what happened later. In the second round, Indiana did take size. They added Justine Pissott from Vanderbilt, a 6'4" stretch forward with real perimeter shooting. That only adds to the confusion, because if Indiana knew size mattered enough to target it later, why not use the premium pick to attack the bigger problem first? Why take the point guard at 10 and the front court player later, instead of doing the obvious thing in reverse? That is why so many fans came away from this draft feeling like the Fever front office outsmarted itself. Now, to be balanced, there are a few possible explanations. Maybe Indiana believed Raven Johnson falling to 10 made her too valuable to pass up. Maybe her workouts were stronger than people realize. Maybe the Fever believe her defense and competitiveness will translate immediately. Maybe they see flexibility in carrying another guard. Maybe they even view her as an asset in a bigger roster plan. Those possibilities are all there. But the problem is that none of that changes the basic roster question. Even if Raven is talented, does she solve what Indiana actually needed solved? And when you are trying to contend, fit matters. That is the bigger takeaway from all of this. Because before this pick, Indiana actually seemed to be building in a coherent direction. They had made moves that made sense. They looked like a team trying to build around Caitlin Clark's strengths while keeping their core intact. That is what made this moment hit so differently. It did not feel like a rebuilding team taking a swing. It felt like a team with a clear need suddenly drifting away from its own blueprint. And in a league this competitive, that matters. You do not get many chances to add real impact talent. You do not get to waste premium picks on maybes when your rivals are building with purpose. The Liberty know who they are. The Mystics know what they are trying to become. The best organizations attack weaknesses directly. Indiana had a chance to do that here, and according to the source material, they passed on it. So was this a mistake? From a pure basketball fit perspective, it sure looks like one. That does not mean Raven Johnson cannot prove people wrong. She absolutely could. Players develop, roles change, surprises happen all the time, but this is not really about whether Raven can play. It is about whether Indiana used one of its most valuable opportunities in the smartest possible way. And right now, that feels like the part Fever fans cannot get past. Because this roster still looks undersized, the same problem still feels unresolved. And if Indiana runs into the same wall again when the games matter most, this draft decision is the one people are going to come back to. Not because it was flashy, not because it was personal, but because when the Fever had a chance to fix the biggest hole on the roster, they chose something else. If you're still watching, drop Fever in the comments.